Welcome, everyone. John Taylor is joining again today. If you aren't familiar with his work, please visit our website. We've got lots of videos that have been recorded, and he does a great job. I just mentioned before I hit record that I have a list of the of ones that I share often. I call it my hit list. But like John's are many of John's are on that list of the more frequently referred to. Just great relationship stuff. Even if you aren't dealing with addiction and betrayal, like this is like how to navigate life, and I really appreciate that. So sometimes it's within your primary relationship, but sometimes you can take these and go, gosh, I could use this in other areas and other relationships too. Hopefully that happens for you as well. It sure does for me. So without further ado, I'm going to turn it over to you, John.
Thanks, Tammy. To piggyback off of something that Tammy said, I think it fits nicely with what we're going to talk about today. Some of the relationship things we talk about are aspirational. It's down the road, we'll realize this. Um, Having aspirations and knowing what we're working towards, I think, is a huge part of growing up, maturing, and improving. I'll give an example. We are working on some sleep stuff with our preschoolers, and that's culminated in a sticker chart that has prizes. And we are in the neighborhood of the first prize. And my son, we have a deal with him right now. He can earn up to 3 stickers a night if he falls asleep without mom and dad in the room. So we sing to him and we read him stories and get him nice and drowsy, and then we want him to get himself over the rest of the hump and fall asleep. And he's done that a few times. And then if he sleeps through the night, he can get an additional sticker. So last night when he went to bed, he needed 3 more stickers to get a prize. And we went shopping for prizes last night. And there's a hula hoop that he's really got his eye on. Really, really wanted it. And his sister the previous morning had gotten her to her prize level, and she got her hula hoop. So the pressure was on, and he put himself to sleep. I'm so impressed with that kid. But he did not sleep through the night. So he only got 2 stickers this morning, not 3. So he was one short, and he was disappointed. And my wife and I were talking about it, and she said, I don't know if I can stand his disappointment. Like, can we just give him the hula hoop? And, we waited for a minute and we said, ultimately, this is how he learns and how he gets it. It's not bad to have something out there that I want desperately, um, that I can't have right now. But I'm going to work towards it. So this morning, as we were on a walk, that's all he was talking about is how he's going to get his last sticker. And he was telling us what songs he was going to sing to himself tonight and what stuffed animals he was going to have close so that if he woke up at night, he could go back to sleep. So having things in the future that have not realized yet um, don't have to be soul crushing. They can be part of what organizes our thinking and ultimately organizes our growing, which is why we engage in any of this, because we need growth and we need change. So we're going to talk today about um, what we serve and how what we serve is greater than the relationship that we're in and whatever is going on right now. So I'll explain that a little bit. This came out of some work with a couple of the couples I'm currently working with, and some shifts that I saw them make. I think really had them transcend out of this tug of war in their relationship. Who's healthy, who's right, who's wrong, to what's the big idea. And once I get my big idea, it is far less tempting to camp out and watch whether or not my partner is fulfilling their big idea. It's like having that sticker chart, and I know I'm one away, and I'm doing all my thinking and all my feeling around how am I going to get there to fulfill that big idea, because it feels good to be aligned. So this started with one of the members of one of these couples asked me, um, "Will I ever be able to have a healthy relationship?" And it came to me kind of in that moment intuitively. I said, "Well, that it depends on what your relationship is supposed to do." So think of 2 UFC rivals, Ultimate Fighting Championship. Their job is to put on a good fight with lots of energy and emotion. Their job is to beat the living crap out of each other. And I don't think you can do that with someone that you feel good about. So you can see in the lead up to a big fight, there's press coverage of all the trash that's being talked, the weigh-ins where it looks like two big silverback gorillas that are intimidating each other. Um, the more that they tear each other apart, literally and figuratively, the more successful each of them are in that job, to put on a good show and make lots of money as a result. So is that a relationship that I want to be a part of? No, not even professionally. Like you couldn't pay me enough to go and take a beating like that. But for some people, it's what they love the most. I would call that a healthy relationship. There's collaboration, there's coordination. We both know our part. We are playing our part. We are doing it very, very seriously. Um, so is your relationship healthy? That depends. What is your relationship all about? And are you fulfilling what that relationship is all about? Now, here, squatters' rights happen. That means sometimes we get in a relationship with no clue about what we're supposed to do or what this is really about. Maybe what we've defined is the thing that was most important to us at 25 or whenever we got together. But people evolve and things change. We grow up, hopefully, we mature. And that what is this about may change somewhat. I worked with a couple in the past where one of the things we had to look at is the origin of their relationship is he was going to be successful and she was going to get taken care of. And love and tenderness had nothing to do with it. And they didn't talk that way in the beginning because they could be extremely passionate with each other. But as they got older, as they went through the ringer of betrayal trauma, it became a bigger and bigger deal to both of them. I need tenderness. I need care. And that's not what their relationship was about. And it's not because they signed a contract, but squatters' rights. They've been doing this for so long. They had to essentially rip up the old contract. They had to get into all the nooks and crannies of where that way of thinking existed. And they had to replace it with, neither of us really had a good family of origin experience. Neither of us felt loved and cared for. We have a shot at that right now. Let's give that to each other. Um, so you have to think, what is your relationship all about? And in the end, you both have to set the policy. You both have to agree, and you have to believe in it above all else, and then perform. So saying, yeah, I think feeling loved, or I think feeling protected, I think feeling safe is important. And then I do something that doesn't make you feel protected or loved. In fact, it makes you feel the opposite. And I say, well, I believe in it. Counts for nothing. So you have to perform, and you can't just have one person set the policy in the long run. The policy has to be set by both of you in the long term. Now, in cases of betrayal, and I've talked about this before, the partner who has been betrayed must be the one who sets the terms for continuance. That may be, I will get better. I'm not going to have a life where I have to look over my shoulder and worry whether or not you are going to be faithful, whether you're going to be honest. So I can do that with you, or I can do that without you, but I'm setting the terms for continuance. This behavior, this dishonesty is not going to be tolerated in our relationship. Long term, some of you may be in that position. What happens long term if both parties don't buy into that, and you get this cat and mouse, cop and robber, parent-child dynamic that's really, really frustrating and really not, I think, fulfilling or satisfying for adults. But so long term, we both have to agree. What does it mean? What do I serve? What am I talking about there? So many of the clients that I work with, partners and their addicted counterparts alike, can feel stifled and restricted by relationships. The fact that there is another person around, that I can't just do whatever I want. They may feel like they're in an agreement they didn't agree to, they don't understand or even desire. So what I see, I would call it like immature later stage relationship. So a relationship that's lasted a long time, but neither of us have really grown up emotionally, mentally, spiritually. It looks like when we're both are desperate to not make the other mad in some way. And this is by observation. Of course, we didn't look at each other and say, hey, I want to make life easy on you. I'm not going to do things that piss you off. I know what that is, and I know it's cruel. No, it's by observation that I would say this is what they've agreed to, because they avoid each other. They don't really tell each other the truth. Or if they do it without any kind of compassion. Yeah, I did that. You get what you get. Um, so they've spent so much time together. They spent too much time together to not know each other. So I know what makes you mad. I know what doesn't work for you. I'm not really interested in protecting that or changing that. But I do whatever I want, and I don't tell you about it, or I manage for you, um, or I do one thing to your face and another thing in secret. We've learned that there's no joint purpose. So we work not to bother the other person, not to make them difficult for us, which doesn't work because at a baseline, people are annoying. People hurt each other. Even really committed people who are trying to do the very best that they can. We're annoying. We hurt each other, and we cannot fulfill another person's needs completely. So we can't just pretend that there's not emotions, dreams, wants, desires, that stuff doesn't exist. It does exist. So what happens in those couples, the later stage immature relationships, is there's actually tons and tons of resentment. What started as it's not worth it turns into I can't do anything with you. I feel trapped. If I do this, you'll do that. If you do this, I'll do that. And it's this stalemate. So all of our attention goes to the prison that we've built for ourselves. So then it becomes this battle of wills. Keep score. We do things in secret. We act out of the relationship frame in our own interest because the relationship, we actually didn't construct a relationship that serves us both. We constructed a relationship that is primarily concerned with not being in trouble or not having things be hard. Or this may sound weird for a relationship. We've constructed a relationship where we've made the most important thing not being alone.
Mm-mm.
I have couples who come into my office, married 25 years, and I say, "What's your goal?" "Well, we want to stay together." And I'll say, "You've been doing that for 25 years. I don't think you need my help." What I'm getting at there is how we are together matters more than just the relationship existing. And everybody knows that over time. That's why we start to think about like, is this even where I want to be? Is this good for me? Um, so what I serve is this idea that a relationship that doesn't have to exist, like a marriage, like a partnership, there was nothing on your day of birth that said this is who you will be with, this is the kind of family you'll have, because our society all depends on this, on your specific relationship. That's not where these relationships come from. It's something that two people decide for whatever reason, it's what they want to do. So you have to think about it this way. Let's say that your family relied on your herd of sheep for clothing, for food, for milk, for money. You can sell the cheese, the milk, the wool, all of that. How would you treat that herd? I think they'd be pretty near sacred. Why would you treat the herd that way? Well, you would treat that herd as sacred. You would prioritize the herd because if you take care of I guess it's a flock with sheep. If you take care of the flock takes care of you. And the proposition does not start in reverse. It doesn't start with, me and this flock of sheep are eyeing each other thinking maybe we could do good for each other. No, I had an idea. I wanted this and I want it to take good care of me, so I take good care of it. There's no entitlement. There's no space for entitlement. When you're thinking about we chose this relationship because we are going to build it to do things for us that have either not been done for us before or we know we can't live without. That's the uh, maturity in relationships, and it's not there's not an early stage maturity and a later stage maturity. It's all the same. We are doing this thing together. We don't have to. Why wouldn't we make it the thing that would be very best for both of us? We're going to get up a lot of time, energy, our youth, our money to this. Why wouldn't we make it the best that we can be? So you have to remember that it's the individuals that give birth to the relationship. It's their idea. So entitlement does not work at all in a relationship. If you are not getting what you think you should be getting, you cannot play the card well, you let me down. You really have to show this was the idea. You agreed to it. We agreed to it. We've been living that way. I was assuming you were living that way too, and now you're not. So on the carpet, do it, or there's no reason for us to continue. That's not entitlement, or I would call that healthy entitlement. Just like when you buy a big ticket item and you get the warranty and your thing breaks down before the warranty is over, you go to the company with all confidence and say, here's my receipt, here's my warranty, here's my item, replace right now. We have an agreement. That's not entitlement. That's claiming what we have a right to claim. So we have to serve things greater than ourselves to overcome our self-centered and short-term thinking that humans are just built to do. So many of you probably know Jane Goodall, the famous primatologist, died in the last week. Quote of hers that I saw circulating is something like, and I looked it up, she really did say this. Human beings are, without a question, the most intellectual creatures to ever walk the planet. But we are not intelligent because intelligent creatures don't destroy their only home. So again, if you look at how we're wired as a human species, we pollute, we ruin, we degrade our environments. It's just how it works. We look for what's easiest, not for what's best. Don't get me wrong, I love humans. This is not me saying we're, beyond saving or anything like that, because we also have these frontal cortices that can predict the future, that can tie cause with effect, and can figure things out. So while it might be easier for me to, I don't know, leave the water running and let the shower heat up before I get in, I remember that I live in a desert and there's a shortage and there's a lake out to the west of me that's dying, is going to become this toxic dust bowl. Yeah, I can get into a cold shower. It'll warm up later. I'll be fine. So we're wired to self-destruct unless we find reasons to not to. And those reasons exist here. They don't exist inherently. They exist here. It's an idea. It's that thing out there that I'm chasing. So I've seen clients who have faced heartbreaking loss, and they have a glimmer. They start with a glimmer of commitment to their best well-being. Not just, I want to fight, not just, I want to be right. You're a slime bag for what you did, and I'm going to show the whole world, or I'm going to prove it to you. It's almost this place I see in both parties, whether addict or spouse, that says, what happens on your side of the line really isn't my biggest concern. My biggest concern is I have no safety right now. For a lot of the addicts I work with, it's I've never had any safety. For some of the partners I work with, it's I've never had any safety. And I'm starting to reflect on that and the toll that it's taken on me, and I must go in this direction. I must find something better. I need peace. I will pursue it at all costs. I will not keep living like this. I don't care what the consequences are. I just have to stop. That's a first uncoupling, I would say, in a relationship where people can line up to really get the big idea. It's not about the best thing that can happen is not that we stay together. The best thing that can happen is not that I just get sober or that you heal from betrayal trauma. No, the best thing that can happen is I can be whole. I can be safe. I can be healthy. Now, two people who believe in that can get together and I think do a heck of a lot through a relationship to make that happen for each other. Maybe not more easily, because coordinating with another person is always harder than doing things yourself up front. But the outcome, the longevity, the depth and the breadth that safety and peace covers is far more when more than one person are working together towards it. We believe in it. We do everything we can. So that's what I mean by the what I serve. What is the bigger idea that actually subsumes me? So I remember early in my days of recovery, I had never gotten honest before. I had never gotten accountable before. I hadn't done anything illegal, But I thought, like, what if I end up on some kind of list? What if I end up like in jail? Like, what if I can never again? And I remember when things really started turning around, is there was a part of me that said, I don't care. I don't care because I can't keep feeling this way. So if I end up on some kind of list and I have peace inside, so be it. I want the peace inside. So that thing that is greater than me, that thing that I will not callously or cavalierly lay down my life for, but really, like, I can make choices. I can weigh the good. Am I going to keep keeping a secret, or am I going to show up to my first meeting and introduce myself and say I'm an addict? So it's this weighed. I have a choice here. That's the thing that we serve. Do I have to be in a relationship? No. Is it going to be better for me if it's the right relationship, that we work really hard to make the right relationship? Absolutely. It's going to be better for me. So this personal responsibility emerges. So here's the questions I'd ask everybody as kind of a spot check on this. What's the big idea of your relationship? I was talking with my 15-year-old this weekend, and I asked him. I said, if you were to look at how you spend your time and where your effort goes, what would we say you value? And he said, school, consuming media, and maybe a little bit friends and family. And I shared my list with him. If we were to just look at where my time goes, it seems like I would value being at my office, cleaning bathrooms, and a little bit family. And I said, how do you feel just looking at where your time and effort goes? And he said, oh, it doesn't feel good. And I said, if you were to decide what is most important for me to put my effort to, how would your list change? And he said, friends and family would be right at the top. And then he said, I don't even know what would come after that. And so then we started to talk about, like, the values you're living by now, where you spend your time. That's just kind of where life has settled you. And I said, nature doesn't really care, buddy, whether you're happy or not. Nature will just present the path of least resistance. Some of his concern was, you work really hard at stuff, or you make all these new plans, and then you just have to do it all over again. And they said, yeah, because nature doesn't care. So if you don't want to just like decay and become a sad lump, like, yeah, you have to work on this over and over again. So you start to find, what's the big idea lived. I observe it now, just an outsider's observing it, versus what I really, really want. Is there a difference? And what does that mean? When me and my partner look at, what do we spend our time doing together as a couple? Is that really the biggest and the best that we believe in? Or do we want to start with some ideas that don't exist right now, but are much better, more compelling ideas that we can start aligning ourselves with? Where did the big idea come from that you're living by? Is this what your parents did? Is this what somebody told you happy relationships were made of? Is it something that you got from a webinar like this that said, this is what you should do to be a happy couple or a successful couple or a safe couple in recovery? I think it's important to evaluate the source, not because there's like inherently good or bad sources, but more so that whether it's an external marching order you're trying to fulfill, or whether it's something that you've internalized, something that's just become yours. It's now in the air. It's mine. Um, did you intentionally make a purpose, or are you settling into the rhythm of what you've always done? Are you making this up yourself, or is your partner working with you to define and hold everyone accountable? That's one of the big questions here, and I'll hear a lot from folks who will say, "Well, I want the best things, I want the right things. My partner's not playing ball." That can mean two things. Number one, it could mean it doesn't matter what you want, your partner will never play ball because they don't really want to do what is required to be in a relationship. They're not mature enough. They don't want it enough. Or it could mean what you want for you is maybe not what's best for them. And maybe you ought to check, are we really hearing each other out? Do I really know what's best for you? If you pull my marriage early on, um, my wife lovingly made fun of what a grump I am, how I never want to spend time with family. And if we were to pull her early on, she would say, what I got to transform this guy into is a family loving, be around lots of people and share lots of love all the time kind of a person. Now, truth be told, some of that has happened. Like the Grinch, my heart has grown 3 sizes and I have more room for that. But I notice every time I lean into that, there's another part that my therapist said to me the other day in this. It was sweet how cautious she was. She said, do you, do you think that you might be a little possessive with your time? It's like, yeah, I am. I am. I know that. um, as much as it might be good for me to lean into family time, there's also this undeniable part of me that I need time by myself. Um, whatever the reason. So sometimes our partner fights or doesn't play ball because we have a vision of what we would like. And it's not really including what would be best for them. And that's the hardest thing I think about being in a couple is trying to synthesize two different sets of needs and values. Um, I think that success in that is not in making it the same list of needs and values, but more getting creative. How do we make a big enough tent? So we emerge then. This is what's greater than a relationship I'm in. It's our secure functioning principles, our policy, our vision. We know what we must do. We know what is a priority above everything else, and we can't compromise on those principles. So if it's kindness, if it's mutual protection, if it's shared power, if it's sensitivity, whatever solutions we seek, we don't compromise on those principles at all. It's a no-go. Why would we move backward in order to move forward? Why would we say, well, for now, this one doesn't matter? I mean, think about it with kids. This is on my mind all the time. If yelling at kids were so effective, why do I ever ask nicely in the first place? Something about me that knows yelling is not effective. That's just what I do when I'm impatient. So we don't compromise because you're not listening. We don't compromise because we hold the line. That's actually really clarifying, and it's where a lot of our, I think, integrity and the authority that comes along with that comes from. Is I stand for something. Speaking of that, and again, I had to look up these quotes because they're attributed to people. Quotes are always interesting like that. So this quote is attributed to a few people, but nobody knows where it actually came from. That idea, if you don't stand for anything, you'll fall for everything. Some people say Hamilton said it. Some people say Malcolm X said it. Nobody really knows where it comes from, but I think this actually has a lot of applicability with couples in recovery. If you don't know what your goal actually is in recovery, everything will destabilize you. I see this all the time. Everything becomes a referendum on, well, this is what addicts do, or this is what betrayed partners do. In my book, not always. A lot of time, it's like, well, that's the form every piece of your conflict is taking right now because you guys have not decided what you're going to be about. You haven't decided what's most important. So it's this fight over who's most damaged, who's most broken, who has the most work to do. So you ask yourself, what do I stand for? Are we pulling in the same direction? Why not get really serious about what is most important to you? That thing that's bigger than you, that thing that's even more important than your relationship. Why not get really serious about that? Because it's the only way that you can overcome entropy. Everything is set to decay, everything is set to end, unless we find something big enough to motivate that part of us that works really, really hard and ultimately swims upstream against our nature. That is why what I serve has to be greater than the relationship itself or whatever's going on right now.
Another great topic. I'm thinking about your son, and like, he's highly motivated, and he's, coming up with solutions, and he'll probably get his hula hoop tomorrow, so but I was also thinking about your wife, and when she's sitting there going like, I don't know if I can handle his disappointment, and you were just talking about holding the line, and if we have the greater vision, we can hold the line. If we don't have that greater vision of like, well, he's just disappointed and his sister has a hula hoop, so she, like it would be really easy. And I think that, that is eh, 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 having the ability to hold that space. I was thinking, you were talking about, and I hear this all the time, I don't want to be alone, that I don't want to be alone. And there's so many relationships that I'm like, you are alone. You're just in proximity to another person. But it's, I think, and this is my opinion, so this is, but that, it's extra lonely to be alone in a relationship where someone isn't, doing the relationship things that are meaningful. John is well trained in the Stantatkin materials, and in a healthy relationship we are healthier, we are happier. You talked about, why would we not want that, why would we not strive for that? I love that you're talking about the herd flock of sheep, and I was thinking, like it isn't like at the sheep at some point you go, well, I'm resentful of you because you wandered away, you're going like, I got to go find you because I got to take care of you. Like you're doing what you need to do. It isn't pointing
Yeah.
out fingers to the little sheep.
Yeah, sheep wander, people disappoint. Um, there's this piece of us that can become so mortally wounded when the thing we want most doesn't just get up and running by itself. Um, so yeah, you become an expert in not only what people do in general, but what your partner does too. Not as an excuse, but more like, Tatkin talks about being able to predict. If you can't predict things which are predictable, this is a normal part of our cycle, then you can't plan and prepare to do something different.
And you also talked about, are we pulling in the same direction? And a really long time ago, when I was in college, the college had a pole. They called it the pole, and it was across the river. And it was the freshmen and sophomores, and mentored by, the juniors and seniors. And, and I literally had the vision of like, there's an anchor person, but there's a whole team of people. And yeah, not everybody's pulling, you know, at full strength 100% all the time, but we're pulling in the same direction, for the success of the team. And so making sure that we're not going to be, all in 100% of the time. And like even talked about, like, you need alone time, and I'm sure that helps you recharge so that when you show up for family time, you're in a better headspace, for it. So having those, awarenesses of what do I need in order to do the these other things that that I want to do, and can show up. I think it's also, you talked about, um not always, like it isn't like we're gonna magically, meld minds, and we're gonna like everything that we do is now like one brain. It is, we're still our individual, and understanding the complexities of how we navigate this space, along the journey. So, uh, always great stuff. Um, um, would you mind repeating the question you started the conversation with your son around values?
Yeah, so I asked him, if we were to just based on what you do, how you spend your time, if an observer were to look at your life, what would they say you value? Where does most of your time and effort go to? And then the second set of questions was, how do you feel about that list? And what would you change? If you got to come from what actually is most important to you, what would the list of priorities look like? And the goal is to actually get to the tension between the two, not to just erase, well, that stuff I just spend my time on that feels gross, I don't care about that anymore. It's you actually have to look at, like, why, if this isn't the most important thing to me, why does my time and effort go there? And just like the sticker chart in the hula hoop, tension is where we grow up. So don't be afraid of disappointment. Don't be afraid of hard questions. Don't be afraid of looking at parts of your life and saying, "Ooh," because you need that experience if you're going to overcome any of that entropy.
So, and he school, he's in school. So how do you go? I have to go to school, you have to go to work, so it's like one of those things where How do you hold the tension for these are the things I have to do, and they don't have to be complete drudgery,
Yeah.
you
Yeah.
know?
Well, we actually talked about that, and I was telling him, I said, I fall into that thing with work all the time. And granted, I'm not just saying this because I'm in a professional setting. Like, I love my job and I love the people that I work with. It's maybe like 1 out of 100 hours of therapy I give. I'm just like, ugh, I'm not looking forward to this at all. Like, maybe. Um, but I fall into this like when I get home from work, if I'm not mindful, all I do that night is set up for the next day to come to my office. And again, like it's important to me, but there's other things like time with my family that I'd be missing out on if that's how I think. That, oh, this is the next most important thing that's going on. So this is all I prepare for. The night goes completely different. If instead I'm looking at, all right, well, I devoted the time that I needed to at work. It is not the most important thing in my day. It's not the top of my list. So what is required as I change my mind? Like some nights I have to find some extra energy to hang out. Some nights I have to find some extra energy to run someone around to this or that. Or I just have to come home with my mind around like, okay, your family is way, way important. So do not let your mood slide to how tired you are. Like, remember, you love these people. You want to be kind to them. You like it when it feels good. And so it's not just a matter of blowing up your schedule. A lot of self-help books out there will say, well, why can't you? Well, there's a lot of good reasons why you can't just blow up your schedule. But it's kind of that old like where my heart is, where my view goes, there go I as well. Um, so it's the it's the taking some ownership over what's important. Again, no entitlement, recognizing just because I have a family and they're around doesn't mean our time's going to be good. I have to throw into that. I have to cultivate that. And if it's important to me, I find the energy to do it.
Well, and I think, as someone in recovery, like I wasn't entitled to having a family who loves me, like that kind of was on the probably not list. So, so there's gratitude for that. And so then how can I show up when you said I didn't do anything illegal and I did the side eye of like, because I was like, oh yeah, it wasn't pretty back in the day. So to have like these are kind of like the high class problems. We actually have a relationship. We have people who care. They actually like when we walk in the door. It's like it's a very different scenario than we could have had. Okay, the next one is huge John Taylor fan. Yay. Loved your series on maturity, and that is part of my question. I found that my recovery took root when I worked on my maturity. I had to grow up past the parts that were stuck in my acting out behaviors. So I'm curious as to your views on the role of addiction in immaturity because I stopped some behaviors and others popped up. What is the correlation between regression and maturity? Can we cure addiction by simply growing up? I know it's not that simple, but I can't help but wonder. So there's lots of questions in this.
I love that question. I love the premise. Um, there's a lot of different, I think, big ideas that I use to try to capture a lot of different swaths of recovery and kind of it's this kind of motion, even though it's not just one kind of motion. So, like, regulating your nervous system is another one that I'd say is one of the big ideas in recovery. Maturing, growing up, facing reality, life on life's terms, as they say in AA, is another one of the big ideas of reality. Surrender. I'm not the God of the universe, nor am I the dust of the earth. I'm somewhere in between. Is another one of those big ideas. So that idea of maturing, it gets, in my view, it gets a lot of the heavy lifting done that's needed in recovery. So maturity is facing reality. Maturity is holding yourself to the standard of what someone your age and with your body and abilities should be able to do, whether you want to or not. So regression and maturity, I think maturity is not a destination reached and we never ever go back.
Hmm.
So it's maybe once a week, maybe a couple times a month, I start a conversation with my spouse that starts something like, I know none of this is real, and this is me being cranky and overwhelmed right now, but, and then it comes out. I would say that is a moment of regression. That, like, this is my worldview, I'm trapped in it. Maturity would not be the destination. Maturity would be the, I know what this is, but knowing what it is, it's not like I can magically change it. I have to wrestle with this. There's another part of a recent conversation with my 15-year-old. He was overwhelmed about some things, and he said, "Mom, Dad, I have like 3 more years till I'm an adult, and I need to know how to do all of this stuff." And I said, "Oh, buddy, like, I'm an adult. I didn't start feeling that way till maybe 10 or 15 years ago." I said, "You're way ahead of the curve than I am." And I said, "Plus, buddy, there's very little I do in my life right now where I am not asking for some kind of help." And I said, for me, that's been the adult skill. It's not a consolation prize. The adult skill is being able to accept, I don't know how to do any of this. So regression is, to say maturity is there's not slip ups or there's not some, less than helpful part of me that comes up. Maturity is how quick we jump on that. Maturity is how able we are to predict it. So one of the things that broke this open for me early in adulthood, my father-in-law and mother-in-law, they live in this house that was built before 1900. And when they moved in, it was like dropped ceilings, and it was the most 60s, 70s looking house you've ever seen. They've restored it. It's like this old pioneer brick woodwork. They did all the work. So I look at my father-in-law, and I think there's nothing he doesn't know how to do. I think I had him come over at one point, maybe to our first apartment. There was maybe a hole in the wall or something like that I needed help with. And I asked him to come help, and he comes with his Better Homes and Gardens home repair manual from 1975 or whatever. And I'm looking at him like, why do you have that? Why do you need that? And he pulls it open to like the drywall patching page. And I said, I would have thought you've done a ton of. He's like, oh, I have. I just want to make sure that I'm not missing any steps, and it's good to just have it fresh right here. The maturity isn't I can handle doing all this. The maturity is, oh, I realize that to get this right, you have to do it a specific way, and I'm not going to take it for granted that I might forget a step. So, curing addiction by growing up, I would put it this way: I think you get a giant leg up in moving through your addiction recovery if you focus on some maturity. So for example, starting to see your addiction not as this necessary thing, it's the only way I can survive. It's no, this is my favorite shortcut. This is my blankie. This is my pacifier. This is my drug of choice. So again, part of that growing up is I've treated this like it's a life-sustaining, life-giving thing. And, unless I'm going to go into like toxic shock and DTs if I stop, it's not. And even then, I can get medical support through nasty, nasty withdrawal, and my body can come out on the other side. So it's not a cure. It's more of I think, an additive. I think it's an accelerant. If I'm focused on recovery, if I'm focused on getting sober as well as growing up, um, I think things maybe work a little bit better, a little more holistically. But like I said, same thing as like regulating my nervous system, learning how to surrender. There's just some big ideas that I think help drive a stronger recovery.
Yeah, and I I've not seen in the decades of hanging around anyone cured of addiction. So I do all of these things that will help me show up today, with the best I possibly can be. And the more regulated I am, the more I'm able to show up in my mature self. All of those things, help. Then I'm not making amends all over the place. So, but I also have that, I have the ability to make amends, and that would be the mature thing. So, but I love that you're talking about, I'm I found my recovery took root when I worked on my maturity. Great. You're creating a great foundation that you can continue to build on. But even I think for those of us, with addiction, we didn't get the owner's manual. We lacked a bunch of skills, so we can get a foundation. I think we have the opportunity that lots of people who aren't addicts never have to bother with. So I really believe, can continue to have that personal growth and can continue to mature. It isn't like one and done, or, oh, I've attained this. It's like there's always an opportunity to continue to learn and grow. And, I've said this on other webinars, I like myself now more than I did 2 years ago. And in 2 years, I'm confident if I continue to do the work, I'll be able to say the same thing. Will I say that I've arrived? Heck no, but it's just that opportunity. So. Oh, this is another good one. How do you learn to surrender? What does that mean from an action-oriented stance? I love the image of sheep you laid out. Thank you. We are both sheep and shepherds.
Yeah, no, I like that. You got it. So how do you learn to surrender? Hmm. I think first you have to kind of level with yourself. This is what like step 4 does. Step 1 does it. Step 2 and 3 do it. Like you're really looking at an honest, no punches pulled, assets liabilities lens. What am I really doing here? And this was the most annoying thing to me when I was early in recovery and early in my own therapy journey. My therapist would ask me, "But yeah, why? Okay, but why? Okay, but what's underneath that?" And it was starting to confront these parts of myself that either said, "I know best, and that's why I do this," or these parts that said, "I'm really scared about doing nothing." And that's still like 20 years after the beginning of my adult therapy journey. That's still the substance of some sessions with my therapist. Okay, but why? But what's underneath that? What are you managing? So I think the first step in learning how to surrender is being able to call a spade a spade. Control is not a 4-letter word. It's just a tactic. It's a way of trying to get through the world. Um, Surrender would be one alternative. It's not necessarily a black and white continuum. Um, I think most of us in addiction recovery need huge lessons in surrender because we've got the control thing down. And we've got it down to the point that we don't even realize how the wheels are turning in our head when we run into a problem, but we're making it all about us and it all hinges on me. And so I will X, Y, Z. So learning how to surrender is, I think, identifying that. And I think it's experimenting. Some people start with prayer. I was telling a client the other day, I was a photographer here to redo some headshots. I haven't had them done in 10 years. And she shot in my office. So I had to cobble together furniture from every little office I have here to make one that looks really nice and cohesive. And I found this little wooden box that I got when I was in ACA, Adult Children of Alcoholics and Dysfunctional Families, and it has a like a little carved box. It has a tree on it, and it's full of little recovery tokens, my chips, my um, other things that hold some mementos for me. But it started as a God box, which was this idea. I learned about it in ACA. I'm not sure where it came from, but when there's something on your mind that you can't let go, you write it on a piece of paper, you put it in the God box. And every week or so, you just go through and you see, what is still on my mind, what I need to be worried about, and what has worked itself out without me being the key player there. Um, so I think another part of learning how to surrender is using your phone list. Go to a meeting, get phone numbers, make calls. Even if you feel like, hey, this thing that I'm facing, this decision, I think it's a slam dunk. I think I have it figured out. Talk to someone anyway. It's really learning how to take yourself out of the I know best and it all relies on me, and just putting yourself in a space that says, what if it doesn't have to rely on me? What if I don't know best? So from an action oriented stance, it's not just this idea of letting go inside. If you're letting go, it's like my conversation with my 15-year-old. Being an adult is realizing that you need help. one thing to realize that, oh my gosh, I need help and I don't have it and I'm screwed. And it's another thing to open your mouth and say, I need help. And I told him, YouTube and podcasts are asking for help too. um, I changed out our bathroom sink fixture a couple weekends ago, and I don't have the good housekeeping repair manual like my father, but I had the video up because it was I just want to make sure I know how to do this. I might run into some problems, like it'll just go smoother this way. So it's having things in place that really challenge that part of you that says, I don't need anyone, or I can't rely on anyone, or I know best.
And I've done it as a mantra, the serenity prayer, because what I learned was, and I had to learn this, that the only thing I have control over is me and my actions and my reactions. And that's a huge point of surrender when you are trying to get everybody and everything, all lined up. It's exhausting too. And it doesn't work. So at some point, understanding that, it's just that I got control over me. And that's a lesson in serenity. And guess what? There's other days where I'm back to saying that as a mantra multiple times. But on the other hand, you know what? Like after I've said it, usually by the second time, I'm starting to relax and go, yep, that's a good reminder. The gift of that is, rather than thinking I'm, Atlas holding the whole earth, I'm not, and that I can just be the sheep or the shepherd, it's like at that moment, I'm part of this, but I'm not, running all of this. So, it so, so it isn't a bad thing, surrender, like, because that felt so weak, but here's another thing. When I went off to treatment, my dad had left a note in my suitcase, handwritten, and I still have it. And the crux of it was, you're a strong person and I know you can do this. And this, he'd already left, the car had left. And I remember sitting there, and I'm sure I was crying, and thinking, Dad, you don't know how hard I've tried. I have tried, and I couldn't do this. And so I think I had the inklings of surrender while I was sitting in detox, and that has served me because I was willing to do the work.
I mean, thanks for sharing that. I'm resonating with some of that, and it's making me reflect that like the the first inclinations of I'm not in control are super terrifying. I know in my own story, like I knew that for a long time, but I couldn't accept it because it was so scary to think of a world where, in my view, nobody was in control. If I wasn't in control, it
Mhm.
was nobody. And now I look at, I don't know, or you know what? I'm not in charge of that. Like it's some of the most peaceful, centering things I can hear from myself or be reminded of from the outside. And I like the way that this questioner is for learning to surrender, because it really is like it's a practice, not a skill. And it really does over time. Like I look back, as you are now, I look back at those early experiences with surrender and how overwhelming and scary and relieving all at the same time it was. And it even feels different as I look back. Like I have some like, thank goodness there was a time where I started to crack open. Thank goodness I could really be confronted with how scary that was. Or I'd still be trying to run the same scam.
Yeah, had I not been willing, I don't think I would have ever gotten any recovery. So, oh, thank you for sharing that. Gave me so much understanding of his struggles too. I ought to remind myself that he has been fighting this his entire life and is likely embarrassed at his behaviors. Yeah, in fact, I was just sharing on the drop-in group earlier today, as I reflect on, the like I could go down the shame spiral of like all of the horrible behaviors I did, and that was all part of what I needed. Like they were hurtful, they hurt me, they hurt others. I own every single one of them, and I don't wallow in them. I remember because I don't want to go do that again. But at the end of the day, those were my behaviors, and that is exactly what I needed to do to get to this point. And like I said, most hours of most days, I'm okay with who I am, and that's a powerful place to be from the person who thought they were worthless, and was using all kinds of behaviors and substances to create a facade of how cool I was. It wasn't working. But, oh, anything else, John?
I think that's it from me for today. Thanks for the questions, everybody. And Tammy, thank you,
Yeah,
contributions as always.
yeah. I'm gonna go take a tissue time. So thanks, everyone.
Yeah,
Great
yeah.
topic again, John. Bye.
Bye, everybody.